We're now ready to proceed with our final panel on culture and society. We will begin with the opening remarks of Ioannis Raptakis.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to this year's conference of the LSE Students Union Hellenic Society, entitled Greece 2022, Always Towards Better Things. The panel that follows is on culture and society and will discuss issues such as the impact of digital technology on society, business and culture. Digital technologies have changed our world outlook on society and culture. Technology has helped in uniting the world and breaking unnecessary barriers. Even the pandemic has not stopped this trend. Despite being under strict lockdown, we could watch our favorite shows and even engage on virtual meetings. Digitalization is equally affecting the economy and all industries. Companies have taken advantage of digital technologies for developing advanced business models and new ways of customer communications. The lockdown saw many businesses go through a complete digital transformation. New services are also growing with several industries. Greece is responding to the new challenges and opportunities that arise in many ways. We have introduced a new internet portal, Gov.gr, which hosts all the digital services of the ministries, agencies, organizations, independent authorities, and regions of the state. The portal has added great value to the plans of the Greek government towards the modernization of the Greek public sector and the better service of Greek people through the use of technology. I take here the opportunity to point out that also at the Embassy in London, we are part of this trend with the use of new technologies like chatbot, intelligent assistant, My Consul Live, etc. to improve the services we offer to our citizens. Another good example in the audiovisual sector and the creative industries is the establishment and operation of the National Centre of Audiovisual Media and Communication. ECOME, which is the name, is one of the most innovative interventions of the Greek administration in audiovisual production, entrepreneurship and education, which aims to support the creative industries financially. And I'm happy to know that the creative industries in Greece is one of the fastest growing sectors of the economy, where cultural resources open up opportunities for investment, as we can see in the quickly growing film industry. A further example of the use of digital technology in art and culture is the project Ancient Olympia, Common Grounds, a new collaboration between the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and Microsoft. This project uses artificial intelligence to digitally preserve and restore this rich site for future generations. This digital revival project allows viewers around the world to explore ancient Olympia, the original home of the Olympic Games, as it stood more 2,000 years ago, through a virtual visit. In other words, the opportunities are immense. An aspect that I find also particularly interesting is that technological advances have made it possible that even unique cultural and historical art crafts can now be replicated with incredible fidelity and accuracy. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, digital technologies have opened several new avenues of information, communication and entertainment, and have changed the way we live in a fundamental way. Their impact on the lives of young people particularly is apparent. For this, I'm very much looking forward to seeing and hearing all of you, students at LSE, discussing about the impact of digital technology, the role of culture, and new priorities on how to improve our society. Thank you very much.
We can now proceed with a panel discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Athanasia Chalari, and I will be coordinating the Society and Culture panel today. I would like to warmly invite all our participants for this panel to turn on their cameras, keep their mics off. I would like also to ask all attendees to keep their cameras off and their mics off. So it's a great pleasure hosting this specific panel today. With great pleasure, I would like to invite all of our participants, all three of them, have been distinguished professionals in their fields, and they are all representing society, Greek society as a whole. So with great pleasure and honor, I would like to introduce and present our panelists today with you. And I would like to begin with Domna Michailidou. Domna Michailidou is an academic economist who holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics from University of York. She has received her MPhil and her PhD from the University of Cambridge in Financial and Development Economics. She is currently serving as Deputy Minister of Labour and Social Affairs in Greece. Dr. Michailidou, and in addition to her work in government, pursues her career in academia. Since 2014, she teaches as an adjunct lecturer at the Centre of Developmental Studies at the University of Cambridge, and she's also a teaching fellow at UCL School of Public Policy. Furthermore, she operates in the OECD as competition expert. So welcome in our panel. And our second distinguished attendee is Mr. Haris Siampanis. Mr. Siampanis is since October 1st, 2018, the first Benaki Museum Chief Executive Officer. He was also a member of the museum's executive committee since its establishment in 2016 and joined the museum as its first Chief Financial Operating Officer in 2012, leading its financial restructuring plan. He has been and continues to be responsible for the museum's financial strategy and operations, aiming at safeguarding its short and long-term sustainability. Before joining the foundation, he has worked as a management consultant at the Boston Consulting Group. In this capacity, he participated in various projects both in Greece and abroad, with particular focus on financial restructuring, members and acquisitions, and strategic operating planning. He studied chemical engineer at the National Technical University of Athens and completed his graduate studies with full scholarship at Tufts University in Boston. He has been awarded with a Certificate of Management Excellence from Harvard Business School, specializing in leadership, negotiations, and strategic decision-making. Our last distinguished participant is Ms. Celia Sigalou. Celia Sigalou holds a bachelor's degree in management and organizational behavior from the American College of Greece and a degree in civil engineering from the National Technical University of Athens. She worked as project engineer in biotech group of companies SA for 5 years. In 2013, she founded and became CEO of Callisto Crafts. Following the Greek economic crisis, with the determination to build a family-run brand and values artisan craftsmanship through modern design while reflecting Greece's rich cultural heritage. So as you can see, we have the honor of combining representatives from three very important parts of Greek society, including politics, including culture and cultural heritage, as well as industry. So we will have the opportunity to have a fruitful discussion with all of you. And the way I would like to suggest for this panel to continue would be to ask some questions that I will invite your answers. The answers will follow the order of the participants as I have just presented you. And after the completion of the questions, of course, and the answers, I would be more than happy to accept questions from the audience and pass them to the participants. So the first question that I think would be very interesting to learn more about, all your personal and professional views has to do with the positive impact of digital technology on modern and current Greek society and culture. Thank you. So, Dr. Michailidou, if we can begin with you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chalari. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the opportunity to meet again, albeit digitally, but for me, and it would have been even nicer if I were able to be with all of you, with all of the students, as my call as a previous academic is something which I'm missing very, very much. So I hope next time we will be able to meet in London and in person even more. So for us in government, but even more so in social policy, the leapfrog, if you want, in digital skilling and the availability of digital services has been a unique opportunity, but at the same time has some unique characteristics that pertain to the most vulnerable citizens in our country, but I think in most countries in Western Europe. For us in social policy design, and social policy implementation, digital services and in fact digital tools is an effective mechanism, an effective weapon, if you want, to combat inequalities and make life more accessible to the most vulnerable. Procedures which were accelerated out of need, in fact, during this pandemic. So with regards to the provision of existing services without physical presence, digital services have been pivotal during the pandemic. So in case I can give you an example, the renewal or the granting of benefits to the most vulnerable, whether these are income benefits, whether these are disability benefits, whether these are child benefits. But then the provision of new services, such as what we're designing and implementing now, the disability card, which is basically like a credit card to all the people with different kinds of disabilities, from developmental disabilities to physical disabilities, is an important digital tool which will allow us, or will allow people with disabilities to have a much smoother interaction with the state and a much more effective respect of their human rights, given the fact that each time they want to go to the theater, they don't have to open up their papers and show and portray their level of disability. But at the same time, it's a great tool for us, the state, to improve our policies and interventions when it has to do with disability. As we all say, in order to improve something, you need to be able to measure it first. So we will be able to see whether the elevator, let's say in the Acropolis, is something that has helped in the accessibility and in the number of visits even of people with disabilities in the Acropolis. So from the one side, and this is, I think, quite a good example of what digital tools can be good at or effective at generally for the state, is from the one hand, they do help the beneficiary to improve his daily life, but from the other hand, the digital tools and the data analysis and acquisition do help the state to acquire some information, measure this, and judge whether these interventions have been impactful or not. But then, and I'd like to stop perhaps there because I can be talking for ages and ages, the reason that digital tools are a great opportunity, I think, is especially with regards to social policy, protecting the most economically vulnerable, but also disability vulnerable, if you want. I think it's a case that everyone understands. What perhaps is not immediately understood by many is that it's a challenge, because when it comes to the most vulnerable people, access to digital skills is much more constrained. So if you want, we have a kind of social cleavage in this access to technology. There are embedded inequalities in access to digital services, and the most vulnerable will be able to enjoy the highest impact of access to digital services, but at the same time have the highest barriers to reach these digital services and tools at the same time. So this is a big challenge for us, understanding and applying as much as possible digital services with regards to the provision of social goods, but at the same time decreasing the barriers to entry and making digital tools and digital technologies much more accessible to everyone, specifically the most vulnerable.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very, very much. So what I will keep from your very interesting approach has to do with the improvement of digital interaction between the state and the civilians in Greece, particularly including the most vulnerable. So that is the greatest advantage of digital development in Greece, especially because and during of COVID, but I also appreciate your acknowledgement of the challenging component of this project, which indeed, especially in Greece, digital skills especially for older generations could be an issue that we have to think of how to overcome that. So thank you very much. And could I please ask Mr. Siampanis to contribute his approach? Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really proud and honored to be among the distinguished co-speakers and of course your organization. Going forward to your question, I can recall about a decade ago where people, especially in the culture, are a little bit concerned about the digital technology and whether the development of the digital technology will change, the habits of the people will ever change, the personal presence in a museum or in a cultural, in an ancient place. But in my point of view, obviously this is complementary, this is something helpful, and this is something that can provide advantages in two cases. First of all, I would like to divide a little bit the impact of digital technology and cultural heritage into two categories. First one is how do we use the digital technology to engage new audience. And by saying new audience, this means wider audience, people outside Greece, younger audience, people, because we do know that people, they are using museums maybe in a later age, maybe university and afterwards, which is really sad. And the digital technology has provided us the opportunity to widen our call to everyone, to literally everyone. We at Benaki, we had the opportunity during the COVID and the shutdown and the lockdown of the museums. We had the opportunity to create a few tools on this direction. One of those was the close-up video series, where a video series that highlights fascinating stories behind objects, the Benaki Museum, as well as the people associated with them. Interestingly enough, even for us, we have seven open to the public museums, and despite that, we exhibit only 10% of our artifacts. 90% of them is in storage. So digital technology is a great opportunity for us to show what we hide in our storage, and this has to do with other kind of collections, except other than Greek, like Chinese, Islamic, Korean, pre-Columbian, African. Another tool that we use is obviously virtual tours. Virtual tours for all our places, buildings and collections. Audio tours in 6 languages, and a program of lectures via Zoom, obviously, in collaboration with the UCLA for the Hellenic culture. Last but not least is the educational programs that not only for children, because also adults, we need to educate ourselves throughout our life. And this is the first category. The second category, which for me is also very important, is the creation of alternative sources and channels to generate income for the museum. We were struggling actually to come up with some new ideas increase our bottom line and ideas outside the box because we were locked down. Digital technology allowed us to reach a global audience and create some crowdfunding campaigns, online auctions, e-bazaars. Our e-shop actually increased its sales by 500% the previous year. End of the year appeals, and it's very interesting where you can see that a guy from Australia bought a ticket at a lockdown museum. Crowdfunding campaign we have, buy a ticket to a lockdown museum, and you see people from Australia and New York buy tickets at the Benaki Museum while they are there, and we are locked down. So in my point of view, it's only positive. This digital technology era should be embraced and should be part of strategy of a modern museum and cultural institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your contribution is definitely insightful because you say most of us are not familiar with how a museum operates or how a museum can excel. But what I found particularly interesting is the fact that most museums around the world do not have enough significant artifacts to display, whereas in Greece we have more than what we can actually display, which is quite remarkable. I don't know if the British Museum, for example, would have a similar kind of problem ever. So thank you very much for this contribution. That was very fruitful. If possible, can we please ask Ms. Sigalou to join us? Thank you very, very much.
I would like in my turn to say hello to everyone and to thank the LSE Hellenic Society for the invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here today. I couldn't agree more with Mrs. Michailidou and Mrs. Siampanis that the impact of digital technology in the world these last years, and especially with the outbreak of COVID, has been tremendous. So people have started adapting to a new reality, which is mostly digital. And so in our business in Kalista, we had to start to do the same. We had to adapt our model towards this direction. The greatest advantage of the digital technology is that makes everything become easily accessible. So from our business standpoint, the advance in digital technology has offered our company an easier and more effective way of communicating with our customers, with people, with our collaborators, with people we work with. Why? Because we managed to surpass the limits of physical borders. And so basically, from a business-to-business aspect, we are able to contact and communicate with all those people in the industry from all over the world, whether this is new points of sale across the globe or new suppliers that we might be interested in finding, or other different services that we are looking for. And as a matter of fact, what I have noticed is that so many platforms have been created during these last years that help companies streamline their businesses procedures and allow us to promote our product and allow us to promote our brand worldwide. This was also the case with Kalista. It's characteristic to say that e-commerce becomes better and faster, and communicated with our people is far more simple and effective. So it comes with no doubt that it is vital for Kalista and for every company in the industry, according to my opinion, to keep up with this technological progress. So from business to customer point of view, especially due to pandemic, customers through our online presence whether this is our e-shop or our social media platforms, our Instagram, our Facebook, have the opportunity to enter and explore the world of Kalista very, very easily and very naturally. So it is important to note here that Kalista, since the launch of our e-shop, we have experienced a constant increase in the share of sales that comes from the online channels. I couldn't agree more with Mr. Siampanis, who mentioned about the increase in their online shop also, about 500%, if I remember correctly. This is very, very important to us as a business model, because it's our revenue. It's the most important part of our business. Since the beginning of Kalista, our aim has been to offer our customers a high quality experience. Digital technology made this possible. Digital technology made possible for Kalista to implement an omni-channel strategy, meaning that a customer that enters our flagship store in the center of Athens receives the exact same experience as when he or she explores one of our digital channels. And this becomes possible only because digital technology allows it. Of course, it comes with no doubt that being on an online platform means sky-high competitiveness. Since we all inhabit the same digital world, we strive towards this direction. In Kalista, we try to be better and better. We try, and we believe that the nature of fashion industry requires that brands excel to their digital presence if they want to succeed.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And to be honest, being a Greek of diaspora myself, I have observed that having access to Greek products of all kinds, including your magnificent series of handbags, was a wonderful access for us, because otherwise, you know, we have to wait until we come back home whenever that is possible. And if we have time to visit Athens downtown and, you know, pursue whatever it is that we want to buy. But we now have an alternative, and I think this is wonderful, including Greeks of diaspora. And I am emphasizing this component because the digital world, on top of everything else, has also united Greeks living within Greece and Greeks living outside Greece in all respects of society. So that I think is very important. Thank you very much. So the second question that I would like to ask, and if possible to hear your views about it, is to tell me a bit about the role of Greek cultural heritage as an instrument in the modern world. So once again, if we follow the same order, so if I could ask Domna Michailidou to comment on this, please. Thank you.
Well, on this, my comment will have to be as Domna as a citizen rather than as Domna as a deputy minister, because unfortunately, my portfolio does not pertain much that is relevant to our cultural heritage. However, there is a very, very relevant debate, right? And a discussion which is, especially given the fact, I'm sure Mr. Siampanis knows the most out of us on this, but all the discussion about the return of the Elgin marbles and the debate on whether you have an excellent ambassador on your own cultural heritage in different museums around the world, or whether all these ambassadors should be, as Greeks, I think that our desire is to have them back home, in the case of the Kariatis, for example, reuniting the sisters and then having all the monument together. So I think, and it's not something that I think, it's almost a tautology these days, that in our part, cultural heritage is a huge part of our identity as a nation, as citizens, as a culture overall. The thing is, with what kind of synergies and with what kind of policies and specific actions, we make sure that we, this shouldn't have happened. The question is, with what kind of synergies and what kind of policies we ensure that this cultural heritage has the impact that it should, basically. So with what kind of strategies we make sure that we transform it into a touristic product, into a product of economic impact that can then be distributed to those in need and those back home mostly. So there, I think the role of technology has played, and again, as we all agreed, I think the panel has played intensively during this pandemic. What aspects of digital technologies transform our cultural heritage, into something that has a huge footprint and has a huge footprint around the world, and thus can have an impactful meaning as the ambassador of our country elsewhere. And examples such as the one that again Mr. Siampanis gave before, the fact that we had a visitor in the Benaki Museum from Australia, or the fact that people do buy Kalista bags not just here in Greece, or expats of Greece in New York or in London. This shows that that the impact of our cultural heritage has, of course, transferred through different routes, many of which are marketable as well, or have been proved to be marketable. The question again is, what can we do as policy, and how can we make it easier and more effective for all those who are in control of the primary cultural heritage material? And there, I think that in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the Ministry of Finance and of Development, quite a few fiscal, if you want, measures have been applied, but I'm sure there are more things that we can do in order to use our arts and crafts, our cultural heritage, our history as a tool which can be as impactful and with as many multipliers as possible.
Absolutely. Personally, I couldn't agree more. But what I found particularly motivating is what you said, that the cultural heritage ultimately is part of Greek identity. And sometimes we take this for given, whereas we shouldn't, because this is not the case with our nations. We are privileged and very lucky to have this kind of cultural heritage being part of who we actually are, and being able to protect it and to share it with the rest of the world is definitely a huge challenge. So thank you very, very much.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to really say something. That what's really interesting, and I think that we've been quite successful in the past 2 years, especially of the pandemic, is that as Greeks, we are very proud of our cultural heritage, but at times it's quite stagnant. So we are proud of it, but without being particularly creative about it. I can see a great ambassador sitting behind Mrs. Sigalou, which is this iconic, let's say, Kalista bag that we all know about, that has been able to creatively, in fact, incredibly creatively, combine the creativity of modern design with the cultural heritage, rather than either relying completely on our ancient or even Byzantine past, but giving a twist of things that as Greeks we haven't been traditionally or historically very, very creative about. So I could not but just say it, given the fact that I see it behind me.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. And I think at the end of the day, it has to do with that we take for granted what we have. And we don't work harder to make it even greater as we should. And I'm pretty certain that Mr. Siampanis would have something more relevant to say.
I hope so. The role of the Greek cultural heritage as an instrument, I would say that this is nowadays more relevant than ever. Whether it has to do with the democracy and its application to the political system, or with science. Greek heritage is always present. You can find it everywhere. In my view, Greek cultural heritage should be an instrument through which the Greek nation promotes the dialogue among civilizations and countries, decrease inequalities and racism, embraces diversity, and enforces exchange of different ideas. I totally embrace this, what I said, because I work for an organization where the founder was a Greek of diaspora, like you are. He was passionate with every kind of art, and that's why he collected also on top of Greek art and Islamic art and different kind of arts. And we are studying the interaction between the different dialogues and different arts and different civilizations. And this idea now is more relevant than ever, because we live in a global environment. We face racist issues like every day, and I think this is a way that cultural heritage should be solved. Should be solved this problem. On the other hand, I feel that its role in economies is still under-leveraged, and there is a great room for improvement. It should be used as an instrument that attracts attention, investments, and contributes to our GDP quite as much as tourism and hospitality. Last but not least is the role that Greek cultural heritage can and should play to improve the diplomatic relations among countries. We see what happens around us. It's a great tool that should be leveraged more and more. And if I may add on this direction, I would like to congratulate the Greek government and the Ministry of Culture for taking a bold decision last December and changing an outdated law, the archaeological law, and now they allow artifacts from Greece to travel around the world for 25 years. This is a very, very bold movement, a movement that should have done a long time ago, and a movement that allows us. I told you that we exhibit 10% of our artifacts. Why this 90% should remain on storage and nobody could see them? It is not conserved in the best way possible. Why we don't open up our wealth, our arts, our wealth to other nations and other people as well? That's my last point. Thank you very much.
That was very very open way of thinking, to be honest with you, because in Greece we are extremely protective of our cultural heritage and very suspicious when it comes in sharing our artifacts. And okay, we all know what has happened in the past. Perhaps this is the reason why. But yes, I would totally agree with you that we have to overcome our own insecurities as nation at some point.
Obviously, there are very strict requirements in order for an artifact to be exported, if I can say, for 25 years. It should carry, actually, you can't create a Benaki museum, let's say, in Melbourne, a Benaki museum in Boston, or a Benaki museum even in Middle East. But there are under certain circumstances and other very requirements, we should have this opportunity to open up our wealth to other nations. And actually, if I may use the word brand, which is obviously worldwide well known right now.
Once again, we couldn't agree more with you. I'm just thinking why, I'm wondering why this hasn't happened yet. Because it has happened regarding other parts of art. Huge exhibitions have been moving around the world with amazing artifacts, and there's no reason why we can't do the same. To the contrary, that could be an additional source of investments and income, of course, definitely. Perhaps it has to do with what you mentioned while we were discussing the previous question. Perhaps it has to do with education as well, and how we as Greeks have been raised in relation to our cultural heritage, and how what kind of connection we should have with that. But that is another discussion, and I'm sure we don't have enough time to start talking about that. So let me move on to Ms. Sigalou. What do you think about our cultural heritage, Ms. Sigalou?
I couldn't agree more with Mrs. Michailidou that said that Kalista is a characteristic example of how cultural heritage can be transferred to the modern world with entrepreneurial activity. We are a good example of that. When in 2013, together with my partner, Eleni Konstantinidou, we decided to do something as entrepreneurs. Of course, we instinctively leaned on our perceptions, our rich history, and our memories of being raised in Greece. Then we realized that for each and every one of us, our heritage is actually part of our DNA. We carry it in our genes. So we decided to keep this tradition, this rich tradition that we had in our country, and choose leather as raw material to work with using fine craftsmanship, with a vision to create products that will convey our culture, but at the same time will show a modern twist. So this is how the Kalista workshop was born, which is nested in our premises. So we have a team of 30 local women artisans that explore age-old traditional techniques of fine craftsmanship, such as signature weaving and decorative embroidery, and put together every Kalista item which reflects Greece's rich cultural heritage. So I guess the starting point of our brand was based on the images of craftsmanship imprinted in our minds since our childhood, and this became the fundamental core of Kalista. So craftsmanship rooted in our cultural heritage is the fundamental core of our brand. Later on, that we grew bigger, luckily we grew bigger, our brand, we had to contact and to have a relation with heritage in a different way. So heritage came into play in a different way. Our historical and cultural background started serving as our inspiration for developing new designs and materials. And every new design carries this Kalista DNA. We are honored to be having today this discussion with Mr. Siampanis, which is the CEO of the Benaki Museum. The Benaki Museum is a guardian of our Greek heritage that interacts with society in a completely new and modern way. And in Kalista, we had the honor of collaborating with the museum on an exclusive capsule collection that is based on traditional Greek craftsmanship. The partnership with Mentis Antonopoulos Passementerie Nima, which is under the Benaki Museum, helped us brought to life extraordinary straps that are woven on the looms of Nima. It's worth describing to you, it's worth mentioning here that the inspiration for these looms, for these straps, was drawn from the Benaki archives, and we found an embroidered bridal pillow representing a schooner, a boat from the island of Skiros. It's characteristic to say that a motif from the 17th century has become an element that was incorporated in our products approximately 400 years later. This is how in Kalista we took something from our past, from our heritage, and made it a modern product. Another very strong example was the development of the new pouch bag that we made last year in celebration for the 200th anniversary of the Greek Revolution. Actually, we named it the 1821 pouch, and it is a modern take on the uniform of the national symbol of Evzones. This pouch is basically a deconstruction of the uniform. Actually, you can see it right behind me. Here behind me. The Greek Revolution constitutes an integral part of the Greek national identity and historical memory, and this major event was a good opportunity for us to turn to our past and reflect on what it actually means to be Greek today, and create a product using inventiveness, sophistication, and craftsmanship. To conclude, I strongly believe that a major reason why Kalista is a successful story today is because Kalista item is a manifestation of passion for the art of leather craftsmanship that combines elements from our cultural heritage with modern design. In Kalista, we strongly believe that by looking to the past, we are inspired to create modern designs that stand next to well-established brands and face the future dynamically.
That was another exciting approach, which emphasizes the inspirational component of Greek cultural heritage, which, again, I'm not sure why we haven't further invested on that, and it is wonderful to see these kinds of initiatives. But what struck me more is what you said, that through your products, what you achieve actually to demonstrate is what it means to be Greek. May I add on this comment that it might be also about what it means to be a Greek woman. And this is quite important because the aspect of gender in Greece is another big discussion. But we are so happy to have a representative like yourself of a Greek industry, which is clearly informed and inspired by cultural heritage, and transforms that into a rather feminine, creative way, because this has its importance as well. So I think it's quite important to also emphasize that. And perhaps Dr. Michailidou might also agree with us that it's not very common in Greek society to have the opportunity to discuss about such exciting and important points with a panel consisting of two very distinguished women and, of course, a very distinguished men participant. This is not usually the case. So I had to say that because I'm very impressed by it. And I would also like to emphasize your approach on cultural heritage as inspiration. I think that is very important, and I think you speak straight to the hearts, especially of the Greek diaspora, because you know how much important Greek cultural heritage is for Greeks living abroad. It might be more important than Greeks living within Greece, because of course of Greek nostalgia. That's apparently the reason.
We miss our country.
Yeah, that is.
And I couldn't agree more with Mr. Siampanis that there is so much room for improvement towards this direction.
Of course.
Our Greek heritage is so rich. There's so much inspiration in there. And we'd like to thank the Benaki Museum, because it was very important for us that we have access to all this information, and made possible for Kalista to incorporate these elements to our products.
You have done a great job. It's our pleasure. Actually.
Thank you, Mr. Siampanis.
It's wonderful to see these kinds of cooperations. You say, unless they come public, I don't know how else we, the rest of people, how could we know about that? And these initiatives are most of the time what makes a difference, after all. And I think these discussions opens up a wonderful bridge with our next question, which again is on cultural heritage. And once again, I would like to ask the perspective from each one of you. And I would like to discuss the challenges and, of course, the opportunities in embracing the richness of Greek culture through business initiatives. And when we say Greek culture, I'm sure this is a very open term, so please feel free to interpret it in any way that you think is relevant. So, Domna Michailidou, if we can.
Thank you very much. And it's very important that it's a panel which is with both genders, as you said before, in Greece, unfortunately, when it comes to business panels, we seldom have a woman in them. And if there is one, there's usually the moderator. And if there are female panels, there are only female panels. So it's great that we have at least a 25% balanced approach here. But with regards to the challenges and opportunities, I think that two main challenges have to do, the one with, of course, scale and the other with stereotypes. I mean, the Greek cultural heritage has, I was thinking of an example now that just the question. The Greek cultural heritage is very heavy, for example, on food and beverage. The actual scale of the Greek economy, the Greek geography, I was thinking, let's say, wine production. Of course, it is a challenge. It's a challenge that reflects in the cost at times. So Greek producers do have to find other alternative ways that they can make their own product more competitive. Another challenge, which I think we somehow touched upon before, is the challenge of the stereotype. How do outsiders, how do external factors or stakeholders perceive what we are, what us Greeks are, hence what is our cultural heritage, but also how we ourselves internally perceive ourselves, what is Greek cultural heritage. So there is this challenge, I think, of diversification to goods, to materials, to services that the external and even the internal audience is not familiar with. And then again, crafts, Mrs. Siampanis talked before about our Islamic knowledge and past and how this is not something which is, for example, traditionally portrayed as our idea, even more so outsiders and externals' idea on what Greeks are and how our own very multicultural and multivariable identity is made. And I think that given the fact that historically and empirically there's been a lot of focus on our ancient past, I think that this has formed quite heavily the stereotype on what Greek cultural heritage is. Hence, we ourselves need to portray even more. There is actually a patchwork, a jigsaw of several different historical moments within our past. And then an opportunity, which I think is quite relevant, given the fact that we are in a forum of the LSE today. I think a great challenge is that there is a great share of the Greek population who is currently active and at a very productive age that has been part of what we call the new Greek diaspora. So the fact that for 10 years, I mean, especially during the financial crisis, we had quite a lot of Greeks that have moved outside the country and have opened themselves and their minds to new ideas, new images. They have formed networks. I think that even if they have returned, even in the case that they have returned to the country or in the case that they're still abroad, I think that this is a big opportunity that we can capitalize and build upon for establishing a more effective manner in which we can promote impactfully our cultural heritage.
Once again, thank you so much. You're opening up, so all of you, you're opening up so many wonderful topics that we could spend the rest of the day discussing about that. But let me pick the phrase of yours and the question: what does it mean what is the Greek cultural heritage? What does this mean? And I think you're absolutely right stating that actually we have excluded quite huge parts of our history in our attempt to create an identity for modern Greeks, let's say. And I'm going back to your first answer, I think, when you said that, when you emphasized very correctly the importance and significance of planning and strategic approach in building whatever it is that we're trying to build. So in that respect, I think answering the question, what is the Greek cultural heritage, building a systematic strategy and adequate policies to help us get to the answer, I think that's quite important. And of course, as always, education is included here as well. But thank you so much for this contribution. And I think Mr. Siampanis might have something to add here.
Sure. I'm a big supporter of the collaboration between private sector and cultural institutions. And how couldn't I, since my business background is engineering and management consulting. And I am the first CEO of the Benaki Museum, which counts 91 years of operation. But the real reason behind that is that I feel is almost the only way to promote long-term sustainability for cultural institutions. Greek cultural institutions should work with private enterprises in order to be fully utilized. There are synergies in both sides. No matter if this collaboration is a donation, is an in-kind offer, pro bono work, cultural institutions should leverage the business and management expertise from the private sector. I can name a few examples from my experience at the Benaki, which I feel that almost every single cultural institution should have. It's not easy, it's expensive, but that's why you have to use the private sector as well. It's online ticketing systems, ERP systems, business intelligence systems, CRM systems. It might sound a little bit weird, but it's not weird, because there is a sustainability part of such an institution, and you should take informed decisions. And those informed decisions, they can come for those systems. The systems, they are there. Online marketing tools, maybe 3D applications, buildings conservation with energy efficient systems. I mean, a big part of our expenses is the energy consumption of the buildings. We're very proud to work closely with many of those enterprises, and we're willing to increase and foster the bonds with the private sector. For example, we were from the first partners of Google Art project in Greece. We have Aegean as our travel partner. We work with Schneider Electric for sustainable energy systems, with PwC for our ERP, business intelligence system and CRM. We don't have so much money that we can spend everywhere, but we give them back and they give to us back. What a great example was the collaboration of Microsoft with ancient Olympia and the Greek Ministry of Culture. If there is one key takeaway that I could keep from all this from this question, is that cultural institutions should do the work they know to do, and they should leave the rest to the private sector. Only then will accomplish their mission without any interruption, because we know how to do our best in keeping our tradition, keeping our collections, prevail the message to all the people, give give the exams of the past and doing accomplishments in the future. And we need to focus on those things, and we should leave other people become part of this story in order to be successful and be self-sustainable.
Mr. Siampanis, can I ask you, what you're describing right now, has it always been employed elsewhere?
That's a good question. I can give you a very specific example. When the museum realized that its top priority right now was to be sustainable, it changed its org structure. It created the position of the CFO and the CEO that was never before there. So what I want to say by that is that you have to adjust yourself. I mean, we're not trees. We may have roots, but we are not trees. We can move, and we should move in order to become efficient and sustainable. We take best practices from other museums, maybe in US or which is more flexible, I would say, the word. But some of them, they are best practices, and some of them we adjust to the environment that we are living in right now.
Right, that's exactly why I asked this question, because I'm under the impression that abroad this kind of collaboration between the private initiative and cultural centers is not something new. To the contrary, it has been employed quite successfully, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, and obviously it's not something very easy. Many times I had to argue with my board for those. It's not. It's a change of mentality. It's a change that we do not provide our cultural assets to our private partners, but we work with them in order to be sustainable and keep offering them to the public.
I think this, as you very correctly said, this mentality is not very familiar within the Greek context. Perhaps abroad is something more common sense, but good luck with that. That is quite an exciting project. And Ms. Michailidou, I think you will definitely have something to say about the private industry and the component of the private initiative regarding culture.
The challenges and opportunities in embracing the richness of Greek culture, I will try to give an approach through the business point of view. As you can imagine, we're all very happy to witness that our heritage is being preserved and showcased in such a great innovative way during the last years, not only from Greek brands, but also from other international well-established brands, like the example of Dior that we had last summer here, that based all its previous collection on Greek heritage. But as we can imagine, when you are involved with such a rich and heavy historical background, as we do in Greece, the challenges are there. And when you want to draw from it in order to go to business, I believe someone must have a pretty strong visual identity to be successful. So the challenge is to avoid stereotypes, as Mrs. Michailidou said, and to try and speak a completely original language that uses heritage as a mere starting point, and then to develop your product, to develop your idea, and to give it a fresh look. From this point and onwards, it is required to constantly try to change, evolve, and stay current in a contemporary and not touristic approach. Touristic should be avoided. And to try to find out what's going on in the market, what is going on in the world, and to inspired and getting all these positive things that you can draw from the heritage. Brands have to incorporate cultural heritage with inventiveness, fresh ideas, making products with strong identity. I believe the key word here is to have a strong identity in your products.
That is again a new window. Now you have opened a new window once again, which is wonderful. So, for example, what you just said before, that we should move away from the logic of touristic approach, which I guess you meant this folklore, perhaps.
This is what we used to have in mind, or we used to have in mind in the past years, when somebody was talking about Greek heritage and culture and all this. It is very important to go forward, to leave this folklore behind.
Exactly.
And I'm very optimistic about the future, because museums are doing a great job. They are the safeguards of our culture and heritage, but they have a new role in the society, and this new role helps all of us have a different view and a different approach to our culture, our cultural heritage. I'm sorry.
You're absolutely right. So I think the whole I think the target should be to level it up. In all respects, no matter if we're talking about the museum experience, or the experience of what it means to be Greek, or the experience of promoting Greek culture through products, whatever that could be. So yeah, I guess if I can just keep a quote for that, would be to level it up. That's yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And having completed the biggest part of this discussion, I would like to move on to the last question, and after that we can open up our discussion to questions coming from the audience, from students and whoever is interested in asking questions. So the last question has to do with your approach, your ideas, your views regarding the priority reforms and investments required for the improvement of our society. So this has to do, this is a very open question, of course, but it has to do perhaps with more practical suggestions of what we can do to move on. So could I start with Dr. Michailidou, please?
Thank you. And I guess that since the question has to do with improving our society, at least as Deputy Minister for Social Affairs, I can try and give some examples for this. Because it would have been very easy, and at times when I think politicians do not give these answers, everyone is going, what's happening here? It's very easy to say, oh, we need to change the judiciary, or we need to change the education system. But this doesn't really mean much in a country that is operating in liberal democracy for the last several decades now, at least. So when it comes to improving our society, I think that it's key to everyone and to anyone's understanding to really comprehend the switch from passive social policy to active social policy. It has to do with dealing with vulnerability as something that can be treated with an aspirin, with some kind of paracetamol policy of taking away the pain through direct, let's say, income transfers, through what happens through benefits. And the other answer to this is, of course, safeguarding one's livelihood with income transfers and benefits, and financing the minimum the state can do to keep this person alive, but also endorsing active social policies when it comes to activating the individual and making sure that he can adapt or readapt or reinsert into an independent livelihood by himself. So the importance of active social policy has to deal with making sure that you give to the individual the tools that will make his independent livelihood impactful and plausible, to be honest. And what do I mean by that? The homeless people, let's say that we give the example of the most vulnerable. Who is the most economically vulnerable citizen in our country now? The one who lives in precarious shelter, right? Someone who lives in the street, someone who is homeless. The passive social policy means that you hand to this individual the guaranteed minimum income, let's say, which, to be honest, is something that no one could really imagine, because the homeless did not have a home, and when they were living in shelters, the state, up until 2021, something that we changed very recently, was not granting the guaranteed minimum income to a homeless, because they were saying that if you live in a shelter, then the state does what it needs to do for you, so you get the shelter and you don't really get the income. We changed this. The homeless person now gets the guaranteed minimum income. However, what's important, and it's a good example of active social policy, is that we have gone much further than that and designed and implemented policies such as 50% of the homeless people now can enter what we call shelter and employment program, that for 2 years, for 50% of the homeless population, the state guarantees for 2 years rent, and for 1 year full wage support, So you go from the passive to the active market of social policy through the integration or the reintegration of the individual. Similarly with pre-K education, preschool education, in Greece we're saying we really need to change our educational system. And when you think of educational system, one really thinks of the universities. But if you want, the damage on social inequalities takes place much before the universities. It takes place before high school. It even takes place before primary school. And making sure that, one, you increase the percentage of your country that goes to preschool education between the ages of 0 to 2. In Greece, nursery enrollment from the ages of 0 to 2 is at 16%, when the OECD average is more than double that. So first, you need to increase the participation of kids into structured environments, that they're not home with a grandma that does not really know how to better the skills of the individual, of the toddler, and then to ensure that they go to preschool education where the essential services are provided in order to increase the skills of the toddlers and of young kids. So it's not just through the granting of finance and of money and of cash transfers. Of course, this is needed to help the most vulnerable, but it's mostly through the improvement of services provided by the state in a level that can actually decrease inequalities of opportunity and make access to a high level of social service provision to the most vulnerable again. But I can be giving you examples until tomorrow, so I think that it's too much of a question that I can reply. So perhaps I should stop by now.
To be honest with you, this is a very important discussion to have, especially with you, because you're representing the government, and of course your input is way more insightful. So what I think is very important is what you said, and you started by giving the example of homeless. Homelessness is one of the greatest problems in the Western societies generally, and it is extremely positive to see that the Greek government is finally doing something about it, because it's not a Greek problem, it's a global problem, and of course different states try to deal with that in different ways, more or less successfully, depending apparently on its context. But it's very encouraging to have examples coming from you, explaining us how the government has actually transformed what you said, passive, towards active social policy, because I'm sure this can be extremely challenging, and it might seem as a common sense kind of equation. I'm sure it is nothing like that. So I would personally be more than interested to hear more examples, because
I mean, I think that the main thing that I was trying to describe is that social policy and improving our society is not about band-aid. It's not about just handing out something. It's really about, handing out something only has to do with finding the fiscal space to do so. But the importance is to find ways to viably integrate and reintegrate into individuals, into society, and into the employment market. That's the most important, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And from a sociological point of view, one will say that the safest way of doing that is to understand what causes the problem in the first place. And once you are able to identify the problem, then of course you have already made a huge progress in resolving the problem. So yeah, of course, absolutely. And a huge part of the Greek reality has to do with Greek mentality, which it's again another topic that we could discuss at another opportunity. So thank you very much. And let me move on to Mr. Siampanis. So Mr. Siampanis, what are your thoughts about ways that we can improve our Greek society?
What a question. I would like to pick up from Dr. Michailidou's last comment about education. In my point of view, the priority reforms and investments required for the improvement of our society have to begin with education. We have to adopt an educational system which prepares our children for a different world. It's a very different world. It's much more different than the world we grew up. We have to allow companies to collaborate directly with the universities and tie the demand and the problems with the scientific research and the solution. It's something that is being concerned as a bad thing in Greece. I see that there are some movements, and the government tries to take some strides in order to resolve this issue. This is an absolutely critical issue. Regarding now the cultural element, because I want to add the cultural element, I would say that simplicity is the word here. There are a few things that could be happen in this place. We could have a public record of registered NGOs which fulfill specific minimum requirements. Let's say they have audited financial statements. This would be a great kickoff. Then we can have fully tax deductible donations from companies to those registered NGOs in order to decrease the sponsorship from the government needed to those NGOs. Matching needs with the capacity to give from an independent authority could speed up the whole process and provide the clarity and the transparency in such a case needed. We could have a point system that evaluates the CSR policy of the private companies and offer allowances according to their involvement with the Greek society. And this is something that could benefit all. The whole idea is that the laws should simplify. The companies should participate and be involved in the Greek society, and the society and the cultural institutions should educate, should survive, and should excel. This is it's a simplistic approach, but simply is not always. It's an art. Simplicity is an art, in my point of view.
It might be simple, but it's not simplistic. So yes, you're absolutely right, and thank you very much. I will very, very quickly ask Ms. Sigalou for her own contribution on that, and then I want to move on to the questions because I've realized that we're running out of time. So Ms. Sigalou?
So I also agree that investments and reforms must focus on education, because I believe that investing in education is truly one of the most powerful instruments for setting a foundation for sustained economic growth and improving society as a whole. Also, I believe that we have one of the most beautiful countries in the world. So many reforms and investments should always be directed towards tourism, since it is our greatest product, let's say. This is the best product of our country. So tourism is an important sector of the Greek economy. So this is quite encouraging to see that so many things have been done towards this direction. However, I believe that short-term investments must also be made so that the economy can recover more quickly from the economic crisis that we had in the past. And we are already seeing positive signs in this regard, to be honest. And we see that economic growth and confidence, I think they are now returning, which is very encouraging also for the market. Finally, I believe that the environmental crisis that the planet is facing today, which is becoming worse and worse over the years, makes this need to be prioritize reforms and investment towards a more sustainable and environmental friendly direction. This would be my general points concerning the reforms and.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that we have all agreed on the main ways that society could benefit and further improve, definitely including education. But I think it's time to open up the discussion to questions coming from students at the Hong Kong Lecture Theatre. So I am happy to receive any questions coming from the audience, and I can then transfer the questions to you. We don't have questions yet.
Hello, we
hi.
have some questions.
Okay, great.
First of all, I would like to say that this panel has been very inspiring and optimistic, and I would like to thank you all for your insights and interesting contributions. You discussed very interesting and relevant topics. Sorry, Mr. Siampanis, but this question is going to be directed to the women of this panel. And as we have the honor to have three very accomplished women here, I just wanted to ask them what advice would they give to young women wanting to enter the world of politics and the world of business, respectively. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question. So, Dr. Michailidou, let's begin with you, and then Ms. Sigalou, if you can respond as well.
Not sure whether my response really corresponds to a female perspective, but at least it's my own insight. I think that two things that I found quite important so far in my life. The one is the absence of fear. So to not really compromise for things and be able to go for what you think and what you want, and not really compromise your thoughts when your thoughts are well substantiated and well researched. I mean, information is something that in my life is the number one driving force, access to information and search for information, which then you can filter and make your own judgment. But then after you have formed this, I think that the absence of fear is something which is essential to finding yourself in a position of responsibility, despite your age or gender or anything. And the second is good teams. I think that or even more so if you are female or if you are young, so you find yourself in a minority as a result of these two. I think that forming good teams in whichever role you are in a team and in whichever hierarchy you are in a team is something that will really help a lot, actually, in whatever it is that you're striving for. So it's going to help in the daily life, because you're going to be much happier doing what you want. I mean, there's several occasions that the dream job is there, but because the team is not there, then you cannot enjoy what you're doing. And the opposite as well, the fact that you might be doing something which on paper is not really interesting, but because the team is comprised of very interesting and helpful and open people, then the job transforms itself into something incredibly interesting. So whenever you find the right people, in whichever position you might be, I think that this is something that one might find very helpful for his own life and development.
Thank you very much. Ms. Michailidou, words of advice from you?
My advice would be for someone that wants to start now his career and try the best to believe in him, to believe in yourself, to believe in your dreams, to work hard, to do the best you can. At what you're doing now, this moment, to do the best you can, to give the best of yourself, and to dream big. Obstacles will be, there will always be, but with hard work, and I think can be overcome. This would be my advice.
Thank you very much. I think very valuable pieces of advice.
And I think with the hard work is this thing that they often describe with, you know, success is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So it's, of course, hard work always needs to be.
Success is hard work, definitely. A bit of luck, but hard work. And believe and love what you do. I believe this is the secret of success.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And if you manage to have this exciting combination of characteristics, then passion is the driving force. So excellent. Thank you very much. That was a very good question. Can we have another question? Is there any other question, please?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your advice, first of all. So this question is directed towards Mrs. Michailidou. Could you provide us with some remarks on the absence of young individuals, and particularly young women, in the Greek political arena, and possible ways in which we could tackle this, I want to say, problem?
Thank you for the question. Dr. Michailidou?
Well, it's a very tough one. It's a very tough one, given the fact that I'm often the subject of questions like that, as in, why did you return? Why are you into this? Because there's always an immediate suspicion on why, since you were somehow successful in what you were doing before, you went there to do this thing, which, especially with politics and stereotypes, the way that they're perceived in our country, is not always the most transparent thing on earth. I think that the answer to this is not politics specific. I think it's very much responsibility specific. So as in quite a lot, and even more in our country, places of Western Europe, gender inequality does not really pertain median responsibility jobs. It mostly has to do with high responsibility jobs and leadership positions. So even if you see median wages and differentials of median wages in Greece, the gap between male and female wages is certainly not one of the top in Europe. However, what is very aggravated in our country is women in positions of responsibility, of high responsibility and of leadership. So as we are lacking women in leadership of businesses, thankfully our panel has the counterexample of this, but with Mrs. Sigalou, but this is unfortunately the case in Greece, even if we now changed it in the regulatory matter and in at least listed companies, you need to have a certain percentage of your board to be females. It has to do with and here is our responsibility as well, providing services to women such that they can strive for positions of responsibility. If once you are pregnant, you leave the labor force, and if you have 2 or 3 kids, you leave the labor force for 5 to 7 years, then it's much harder to climb the ladder of high responsibility jobs. So this is our position again, to make sure that we supply these services that make it indifferent, at least when it comes to financial provisions, to a woman to leave the labor force to take care of her kids. I mean, it should be mostly, if she leaves the labor force, it should be only a decision of not foregone income, but of choice to be with your kids. So I think that the more we discuss, the more we give the more we discuss about positive examples, the more we give the opportunities to people to discuss what happens in other countries with regards to the supply of services that act as enabling factors for women to pursue positions of responsibility. And then I can tell you my personal opinion, which is in favor of positive I forgot the term right now, but of positive discrimination. So basically, in order to reach, it's not something which is in perpetuity, but in order to have an initial jump, an initial increase in positions of responsibility, I am in favor of positive discrimination for anyone, not just women, who are currently representing a minority in employment positions, for example.
Thank you. As we're running out of time, I would like to ask 2 or 3 questions to be asked together and have the opportunity to answer them in a combined way. So could we please have the last 2, maximum 3 questions?
Yes, thank you very much. So on a previous remark, so we said that although it is important to protect and promote our already existing cultural heritage, we should also focus on developing our culture. So I would like to ask again for any advice on the younger generations on how to take these steps forward to develop our heritage. And we have one more question.
Yes, please.
Hello, and thank you for your insights. The question goes mostly to Mrs. Sigalou, and it's regarding the industry you're in, the fashion industry. In my view, kind of borders arts and business. So how do you manage to balance in your products kind of the commercial, to make your products more sellable, more commercial, and combine kind of the artistic inspiration? Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Ms. Sigalou, would you like to begin with your answer, and then maybe we can move to Mr. Siampanis and.
So about how we combined to other products, if I heard correctly, how we manage our products to combine the cultural heritage and the commercial part. This was the question. Can you hear me?
Can you please repeat the question, the second question, to Ms. Sigalou?
Yeah, sorry. So how do you balance the more commercial side of a product and the artistic side? So, you know, the border between, you know, something being artistic, inspiring, and something potentially being more commercial can be hard to find. How do you find that?
For Kalista, the fact that we have used cultural elements had worked in our favor, because it led us to incorporate the handcrafting details in our products, that made that resulted in having a product that was easily recognizable and unique. So this was this boosted sales, because if you saw one Kalista bag, then you will easily recognize the next one, and this helped us a lot in the sales. In sales and in general in creating brand awareness. So from another point of view, I have to say that this happened after hard work, a lot of study on cultural and on this handcrafting details. It is so much work involved in order to do that, so much attention to detail, which, yes, resulted in a product, in a good product, that in the end, when you have a good product, everything goes on easier.
I think that makes sense. Yes, the most important thing is to have a good product. Absolutely, it's the equivalent of location. So yeah, I get that. So very quickly, let's move on to the first question, which, if I remember correctly, had to do with again, word of advice for younger generations regarding culture, how we can improve our culture.
Again, the answer would be to study a lot. There is immense information on our cultural heritage. The archives of Benaki Museum, for example, are so rich. You will be amazed to see how much information is there, how much beautiful designs, beautiful colors. So if you study them thoroughly, and you try to inspire a fresh idea and inventiveness in all this, eventually you will find the best way to come with an idea and to go on in entrepreneurship action with this information. You need to love what you do. This is what I answered in the first question. It is very important to love your country, to love your job, to love what you're doing, what you are dealing with, and to work hard and with a professional attitude. You need to give the 100% of yourself to this.
This is very important. You are absolutely right. We only have one more minute, so I will very quickly have to ask Mr. Siampanis to give his input in that, please.
I would like to very quickly thank Mrs. Sigalou, and just to declare that we haven't paid her today. She has paid us because she's buying things from our mentees. So thank you very much. Regarding the question, I would agree with Mrs. Sigalou. First thing is to read and study about the things that belong to your heritage. Second thing is to start feeling it, what the heritage means for you. The third thing would be to come in touch with this heritage, even this is a museum, even this is your home in your village, even this is everything you can feel this heritage. And all the previous ones you have to apply to your daily life. They have to be a part of your living, your thinking process approach, and your way you judge things. It's a filter, it's a criterion, I would say, of how do you see life. And if you do that, it's obvious that you will keep your heritage, and you will bring this heritage to your children and your friends.
Exactly, and that was a wonderful way of concluding our discussion today. I'm very sorry we don't have time to take any more questions, but I would like to gratefully thank all of you, Dr. Michailidou, Mr. Siampanis, Ms. Sigalou. The discussion was wonderful. I don't know if we share the same feeling, but I truly enjoyed it. And I did learn a lot today, and I would like to thank you for that. And I also hope that we will have another opportunity in the future to have similar kinds of discussions. And I will just finish by saying what one of the questions was about, that it was a very, very positive and I think it was very positive discussion. And I think we had many positive messages to keep. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending. Thank you for the participants. Thank you, the participants, for attending as well. Enjoy the rest of your day in whichever part of the world you find yourselves at. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good
Thank
day.
you very much. Thank you.